Rotimi is a highly regarded consultant and business leader based in Lagos, Nigeria, specializing in organizational development, business transformation, and technology optimization. An alumnus of Awolowo University, Great Ife, Rotimi has added to his education through programs with the Lagos Business School, Pan Atlantic University, and the London Business School. Rotimi holds multiple certifications in key areas such as organizational excellence, business process management, project management, and enterprise risk management. His commitment to sustainable business practices and social ventures in Nigeria is well recognized. Rotimi is an active member of several professional organizations, including SHRM and American Society of Quality, ASQ. Rotimi's contributions to the field of organizational learning and development make him a valuable asset to any event focused on these themes, bringing a wealth of knowledge and practical experience to the table. Please make welcome Rotimi Lee-Joffy.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to the organizers for having me here once again. So I was saying to Demola at the start that now it's going to look like I'm just copying everything everybody has said. Because what else is there to say after we've listened to all of this? So I've got the responsibility of talking about leadership in learning. Do we have the slides? Okay, leadership in learning. So we spent quite a bit of time talking about what it means to learn. How do we measure that we are learning effectively? How do we measure that we are getting things right in learning? And it's a question that has always bothered me. Right from the time when I used to work delivering learning solutions primarily, which was all of these times I go to customers and I say to them, come and attend this training, you need to do this course. How am I sure that this program is adding value to the customer? How am I sure that I'm not just trying to hit my revenue numbers, which were really big numbers at those points? And then as I went through the journey of my career, taking on different roles, so I moved from a role where I was primarily providing learning solutions to a role where I was now responsible for designing organizational learning and development solutions and driving quality. So from the point where I was selling, now I was the consumer of the service. So the question became more important to me because I'll sit in management meetings and the conversations will always be around, if we have to send people to attend these types of trainings, and this organization that I was managing trainings for, quite a lot of the trainings were not trainings that could have been provided locally. So you had people who had to fly to Denmark to get the trainings that they needed. So if you bring in somebody who is new into the organization, you've got to spend quite a lot of money to get them to the point where they are ready for competence. So that question came up again. How do we measure that all of these interventions are actually working? And then my career moved on to a point where I now work as CEO of an organization, and I have to think about these questions around how do we make sure, one, that we are learning? How do we make sure that the learning interventions are not just adding value to the organization in terms of cost? You know, you can add value in terms of cost, but you're just showing the pride that we spent X million on trainings this year, and that's just the only pride that you have to show for it. In terms of the actual development that is going on, not much. Thank you. Not much has happened or is happening. So one of the big lessons I learned, and I'll be sharing quite a number of those lessons as I go on, is that for every organization, the leaders set the tone for the culture. So when it comes to learning, the leaders of the organization are the ones who set the tone. How many of us have heard this saying that culture eats strategy for breakfast? They say it's Peter Drucker who said it, but I don't even think he himself would acknowledge that he said it. So he says, culture eats strategy for breakfast, which is in every organization. If the culture is wrong, no actual learning would happen, which is, it's possible for culture to impact the way we learn. So it's very easy in organizations, and I've seen many times, where we do learning just so that we can tick the box that we've actually learned. So as everybody goes, you know, learning becomes a bit like, have you read the terms and conditions? Yeah? You know, there's one lie that everybody tells. And it says, have you read the terms and conditions? Yes. And then you start. If you don't know, if inside that they say, sell your soul to us. Yes, I've read the terms and conditions. And in order for learning to be effective in any organization, it has to be a priority for the leadership of the organization. And when I talk about leadership, I'm not just talking about the CEO of the organization. Everybody who has a responsibility for setting direction within the organization has to think of learning as a priority. The organizations that stand out are the organizations where the leaders create an environment where learning happens. Let me ask you a question. What percentage of learning in an organization do you think is formal? Just shout out a number. What percentage of learning in an organization? 10. So what does that tell us? What does that tell us about? If 10% of learning is formal, what does that tell us? Yeah, it tells us the inverse now, that 90% of learning is not formal. So let me give an example. So I remember my first job. I got a mail from my MD, and she said to me, get back to me on this by COB. And I thought to myself, which app is COB? Because I knew of emails, I knew Skype, then there was, I'm young by the way, but there was Yahoo Messenger, there was MSN Messenger. He said, get back to me by COB. So what's COB? Because I just would get back to me by COB. Okay, it's a platform. So I turned to somebody and I said to them, what's COB? The person looked at me like, what's COB? I said, COB, COB. Oh, COB, did you get a mail from so and so? I said, yes. So it means by close of business. So what happened at that point? I learned. I didn't go into a classroom to learn, but that learning happened by me just interacting. So of the 90% that is left, 20% of it happens by what we call social learning, which is by just interacting with people who sit with you, you learn things. So you walk into an organization, they tell you, you don't go to a training program to know where the best lunch is. You don't know where, nobody goes, I don't know if it's part of induction program, anybody, where you say, this is where you find the cheapest lunch near the office. You just learn. They say to you, oh, your manager prefers when you give a summary, when you're making the presentation. You don't learn it in a classroom. You just learn by interaction. And then the 70% is what is called on-the-job learning. So you learn by doing. You just start to do, and you start to learn. And I'll tell you a short story about on-the-job learning and my experience that I found with that. Oh, no, I've come backwards. So there are four principles that I've learned around learning or leadership in learning. The first one is that leaders have to lead by example. You can't be a leader who is committed or saying to people that we are committed to learning and you are not learning. You have to lead by example. People have to see that you are leading. I can't remember which of the panelists was talking about the MD who came back with a book and then gave people a book to read. I'm certain that the MD who came back with a book actually reads books. Because if the MD does not read books and comes back with a book, they'll be like, you self they read. Right? And then if somebody says to you, you'll present on it, the chances are the person has read the book. So that when you are presenting, you know how you buy a book for somebody on change, and then they present to you on accounting. It doesn't tally. The only way you know is if you have actually read the book. The second principle I've learned, I've learned this as we go on, is that there has to be an alignment, and I think we've talked about that a lot, between what we are learning and the strategy of the organization. I'll talk about the principles broadly, but I'll narrow down and talk about the how as we go on. But there has to be that alignment. How many people have seen a wheel being aligned before? If you want to know if the wheel of your car is aligned, just drive it and leave the steering. If it goes straight, you are fine. If it begins to, you know those cars that are driving, they are fighting with the steering to come back. There's wrong alignment. So learning has to be aligned with the strategy of the organization. Number 4, the leaders have to provide the resources for learning and the support for learning. It is more important for leaders to provide the support not just for the formal learning structures, because the formal learning structures account for only 10%. The leaders have to show support for the informal learning structures as well, which is availability to let people ask questions. So the support could also be the questions that you are asking. So when somebody runs to you with a problem, the response is not always, this is the solution. Because what you're doing is that you are not providing the support for the person to learn. What you've invariably done is leaders are creating supermen within the organization who have all of the answers, and you're invariably saying you cannot learn enough to have the answers that I have. And then the fourth one is the leaders have to inspire change, which is you have to embody this learning that you're talking about. And I'll drill into this a bit more by talking about a few case studies around this that I found. So the first case study is with Microsoft. And when Nadella became the CEO of Microsoft, it was at a sticky period for them. So they introduced what was called growth mindset culture within the organization. And this was really to ask people to shift from the know-it-all mentality to the learn-it-all mentality. Which is, you don't go into a classroom to teach a person how to move from know-it-all to learn-it-all. How would that training program go? Okay, welcome to this training program. We're going to be talking about how to shift from know-it-all to learn-it-all. So don't think you know it all. Ask questions, learn it all. Have a wonderful evening. And everybody goes. So what did they do? They began to create systems within the organizations, hackathons, sessions where they were getting people to work within groups to solve problems, which was enabling them to learn and develop. We were talking about costs earlier. Some of these initiatives cost sometimes more than pizza. And just get people around the table. Let's solve this organizational problem along a box or two of pizza. And they were solving problems. And they came up with solutions like Azure, like Microsoft Teams, by just having that switch in mindset, which was the organization learned a different way to think, which is we don't know it all, we are going to learn it all. The second case study we'll look at is with the Dangote Group. I think, where is Nuruddin? Oh, it's gone. Yeah, you can clap if you want to. So, with the business, so in Nigeria today, the second largest employer of labor after the government is the Dangote Group, outside the federal government. So if the Dangote Group fires people, all of their staff, there will be a problem in the Nigerian economy. So one of the things that as the group has continued to grow, there is a real challenge around how do you build the technical skills, for example, let's even take in Lagos, to run a refinery, to run a fertilizer plant, to run cement plants. So they set up what was called the Dangote Academy. And the idea of the Dangote Academy was to build the skills that are required to run the businesses. So as you're building a fertilizer plant, what competencies are required to manage a fertilizer plant? So skills around instrumentation, skills around quality control, all of those skills are being built to support the operations of the business. So the competencies required to run the business have been identified. The trainings are running in alignment with the strategy of the organization, which makes it easy to tie the performance of the academy to the performance of the business. So it's easy to say, now we have more locals running the business, and we have less expatriate dependency. So it's not a battle at the end of the day, where you are fighting with the business that we did it, we didn't do it. The whole idea of the academy from the beginning was in alignment with the expansion strategy of the business. And by doing that, people could find that the organization was interested not just in their development for the sake of using them to perform tasks, but ensuring that they continue to be in alignment with where the organization is going. So the Future Fit initiative was an example of an organization that was inspiring people to change, to learn, to say, these are the possibilities that you have. Now, take ownership of the learning to identify, how you want to grow within the organization. The fifth case study, for me, is the most successful academy in Africa. And that academy is the Unwa Boy Apprenticeship System. Yeah, feel free to celebrate it. It's the most effective of all of the learning academies in Nigeria. And this is an academy that has led to the development of thriving commercial hubs. Onitsha Market, Alaba Market, and many other markets across Nigeria where you have full market dominance. And at no point in the learning intervention is any Unwa boy sitting down in a classroom to learn this is profit, this is loss. At best, he makes a mistake, he gets a knock, a slap, a self-punishment, and then he resets his head. But what happens as a result of that is that there is a master who takes responsibility for the development of somebody else by giving them opportunities. So a key part of learning is the ability to take what you've learned and actually apply the skills. Because it's easy to, how many people here can swim? How many people here can't swim but know how to swim? Yeah? You know the method. It's not like this. Huh? It's just like, or driving. Or when you are watching people play chess, it's you that knows the move. Like, see, I'll be draft. Pa, 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 pa. So it's easy to sit down and say, I know, but the ability to apply is a critical part of learning. So as organizations design formal learning, we must also have systems to guide people through the informal learning. Because majority of the learning is happening outside of the classroom, outside of the LMS, outside of the sessions. It's happening at lunch break. It's happening every time a person walks into their manager's office to ask a question. And the manager says, you are not paid to think. What does that say? Your development is capped at the level of following instructions, so there is not so much more. So the Nwaboi system is that you've seen a case where the learning and the development, though informal, is driving market domination. So one question that we've all been asking all day, so how do we measure this? So we all know that learning must align with business strategy, must support the objectives of the business. It must be tied to key performance indicators. But there's a model we've talked about quite a lot today, and I'll just touch on it briefly. So I promise, I sent this slide 2 days ago, so I'm not copying. So the Kirkpatrick model, which we've talked extensively about today, and I've got to give kudos to the panelists. I think they've made, we can put your hands together. They've made my life a lot easier, so I can just speed through. So the 4 levels, and then I think it was Oluwakemi who talked about the Phillips model, so I'll tell you how they align. So the Kirkpatrick model defines the method for evaluating learning at 4 points. So the first one is what is called reaction. The Phillips model calls this satisfaction. So reaction is really, did you enjoy the learning? So if you leave here today, you say, oh, did you enjoy the training? You say, oh, yes, we came here, plenty of people spoke English, and we met people. That's reaction. We ask questions. We ate Indomie, we met our friends. I saw Kingsley over there. How are you? And we met people. That's reaction. The second thing is, what did you learn? And say, I learned Kirkpatrick model, and that there are 4 levels. Okay, fine. How is that going to influence the way you behave? So we evaluate downward. So when people go for trainings, they come back from the training, and we say, oh, so immediately after the training, usually, people will say, fill a feedback form. So the feedback form you get from the training provider is usually an evaluation of your reaction. Did you like the trainer? Did you like the food? Was the AC coach? Did the trainer like you? Tick, 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 yes, 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 yes. Nigerians, we score in 2 ways. It's 1 or 5. It's 1 or 5. We don't do 3. It's either you hate the person or you like the person. If I score 1, they will sack this person. Wow, 16 seconds. Okay, so we evaluate downwards. So, learning. So when you get back, they give you a survey. They say, come and train everybody. So you come back, you do a TTT, everybody, this is what I learned. I learned Kirkpatrick model, reaction, learning, behavior, impact was defined by a man called Kirkpatrick. Kirkpatrick was born in 1842. He had this. Clap for you, and you go. Everybody now knows it. The next point is, how has that knowledge helped the business? Because we can know and not use it for anything. And it's just useless. No, there are many things you know that is basically useless for your job, and your company paid for you to learn it. I'll just stop there. Then result is now, what is the impact on the organization? When designing the learning interventions, we actually design from the bottom, which is, what are the results that we want to achieve? What behaviors will drive those results? What do people need to know to be able to behave in that way? How can they get that knowledge? Which is, in designing the methods, we first have to ask the question, and it has to be clear at the beginning what the results will be. You can't be dragging improved sales performance with the head of sales if he did not know at the beginning that your training will improve sales performance. But if it's clear that this is how this result would impact. So these are the challenges. We notice that your team is struggling with lead generation. So we're going to take them on these programs around how they will generate leads. Line manager, are you committing to coach them through that process of lead generation? So when the person comes back with a nonsense, you don't say you are stupid, you don't have sense. Can't you see that they are proper customers? You then ask them, okay, why do you think this person is a lead? What is the method by which you are qualifying this lead as a lead? Then you are helping them to actually go through the learning. So let me just go back here. I don't think we have much time for this. So the important thing is that leaders, through their commitment to learning, can transform learning from being a compliance exercise to being a performance driver. Because if people think that the only reason I'm learning is so that I don't get a mail from learning and development, or if learning and development feels that the only way people are learning is because they've not gone into, when they go into a classroom, then we miss the whole point. Because part of our role as learning and development experts is not just to manage the people. Just skip this. Go. I don't have time. Okay. Not just to manage the people, but to manage the systems that drive learning. And those systems that drive learning are 90% informal. And it is our responsibility to understand those systems, understand how people react to those systems, understand how knowledge is transferred in those systems, and the results that we can drive by using those systems. I hope with these few points of mine, I've been able to convince you and not confuse you that leadership is important in learning. Thank you very much.